Hello everybody and welcome to this Research Forum event. It's an absolute delight and pleasure to have with us this evening Peter Cant and the Hooligan Art Community. I first came across the Hooligan Community through a project that they did with Mahogany Opera in Halle in Germany. But before we talk about their new project, Bunker Cabaret, I would love to invite Pete, Lubia and Danny to introduce themselves. So maybe in that order.
Hello, thank you, Charlotte, and it's a great pleasure to be invited. Thank you. My name is Peter Cant. I'm a theatre director, opera director, and librettist, and I've been making theatre for many years in devised formats, also with community youth groups, and all sorts of things. And yes, I met Danylo Shramenko, Danya, in 2016, and he's with me the co-director of Hooligan Art Community and one of the co-founders, which we founded in Ukraine in 2019.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Danylo Shramenko. I'm a Ukrainian actor from Ukraine, and I'm a co-founder of Hooligan Art Community, and now I'm in Berlin. Yeah, and thank you for this invitation for this meeting.
Hello, my name is Liubov. I'm a director, video artist. I joined Hooligan Art Community, started to work during COVID time when we made first video of Hooligan in the field. It was 2018 or 19, yeah.
20.
And oh my God, yeah, nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So Hooligan Art Community are this remarkable Ukrainian theatre company who've been producing some extraordinary work. Their latest piece was Bunker Cabaret, the name of this evening's talk, which was performed in Somerset House, which is actually where I am speaking to you from this evening. I wondered, Peter, if you wanted to just start by saying a little bit more, perhaps you and Danylo, about how Hooligan Art Community came to be and what your vision for theatre is. I know it has a lot to do with visual art and art history.
Yes. So yeah, I met Daniel in 2016 along with other colleagues who are now part of the community in Kyiv in a festival called Gogol Fest, which is one of the largest independent theatre and contemporary arts festivals in Ukraine. It's been running for many years, and it was an invitation from the European Theatre Convention, which is based in Berlin, for theatre directors from across Europe to go and work in the context of the Gogol Fest, meet Ukrainian artists and to research together. And it was an amazing opportunity because from my London existence, which I'd just recently given up in 2016 to move to Berlin, we were only able, as young directors, emerging directors, to work with small black box rooms and 2 or 3 actors at the most. And when I went to the Gogol Fest, a producer called Andrei Palatny was introducing us to all these young actors, this amazing independent art scene in Kyiv, and factory space, endless factory space. So floors upon floor of beautiful old dilapidated rooms in an old nail factory. Which it was like being given a present. It was like everything I'd been dreaming of arrived right at my feet. And we made some work together in 10 days in a residency. And through the collaboration with the artists, like 20, 21, 22-year-old artists, we identified like somehow a kind of shared vision, or there was something that we had in common, some things which we had coming from completely different impulses and cultures, but we met somewhere that felt new, like a third place, and we kept that going. We made exchanges to Germany. We always found residential situations. We got slowly a little bit more money for paying for the basics of being in residency together to make shows. And that happened through end of 16 into 17, 2018, and by 2019, Daniel and I had sort of decided to formalize in some way the work we've been doing and create the company Hooligan Art Community, which we were able to produce our kind of first flagship show in the center of Kyiv at an amazing place called Mistetsky Arsenal. And that was a show about another actor who we work with, a co-founder of the company, Sam Kiesley. It was about his life growing up as a football hooligan in eastern Ukraine, in Kharkiv.
Gosh, and I know that from what you've been saying, the site-specific places are just so important to you, having worked in these factories and enormous empty spaces. And that's been something that has continued throughout your work.
Yes, I'm just going to share with you, but can you see the pictures that I've got on?
Yes.
So this was the work in 2019, with which we work with the idea of working with nothing. So we work with the things and objects and spaces that we find to create, to collaborate with the space to create the dramaturgy of the show. So this space presented windows, natural light, found objects, and we wanted to give audience, every time we worked, we wanted to give audience the experience of space. And that if the audience could have the freedom to move as if like a movie camera, and they could decide on how to move close to the actors or far, that they would have an experience of themselves in space that would somehow transcend the problems that I've been trying to understand about theatre in the contemporary field, of how to create actually something like more of an encounter between audiences and artists, without hiding where you are, without trying to create a false immersive situation, but to create some kind of contact with the people. And it became a method which we discovered through the incredible work of the artists who were able to activate all of this, that the space itself could be somehow helping us reach a kind of authentic relationship with history and with iconic space and shared space. So that this setting was an old arsenal building in Soviet times, previously a monastery. But if we worked with the sunset, so the idea was that historically the workers in this building will have had the same experience of when the sun set in this building. And if we could tap into that and create lines of movement for the audience and for the artist that corresponded to the history of the building through the relationship to light and acoustic, that we would already have our set, we'd already have everything we needed. We wouldn't need to bring any more except the most delicate kind of work with costume or shadow or small props.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you've been amazingly adaptive in terms of working in spaces like this, and being able to occupy them at very short notice to make theatre work. It's one of the things that I've so enjoyed exploring with your own work. But of course, with the pandemic, I know that all ended, and it's important just to ask, I think, this question before we talk about Bunker Cabaret properly, because I think that's when Liubov first became involved with the company, particularly thinking about the distance between a camera and Zoom versus the reality of the theatre that you'd been creating previously. I don't know if you'd like to say something about that.
Yeah, it was absolutely interesting, surprising experience. First of all, because the first conversations that we have, it was conversation about how to show and kind of have a small representation through the short film, what is Hooligan, while Hooligan already have a clear form. And this is conception of distance we touched during the pandemic was started. And the first residency where I clearly took part in the video artists and joined the group, it was a residency in Dnipro that have a clear name, Radiation. That kind of bring to us this question of distance and radiation from perspective of this feeling that this spaces and distance between people created a strange feeling on understanding and does it mean, the distance by itself. And it's really interesting because we have the reference, inner reference after Chernobyl catastrophe, and it's still awake, this trauma of this. And also there was clear something appears during this time that will feeling of that something will happen next. And this was interesting raw emotion that was really great to show, especially with the camera and people, and how feeling that we are nearby but we are really in a distance, and how many in this invisible space exist, and how to show this invisible space. And here we can use this distortion that we have by camera with the sound, visuals. How can we show something that we never can see in the real life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have a clip of radiation we can show very briefly?
Yeah. Should I show the residency in Dnipro, Luba, as the first thing?
Think
We got British Council funded for research in Dnipro at the DCCC, Dnipro Center of Contemporary Culture, which has this incredible blue room, an old imperial pre-revolutionary blue room, as we called it. And I couldn't go because it was the pandemic. So I set myself up with a laptop in Berlin while Luba created portals for me all around the room with phones and laptops. And we'll just show you like a 5-minute clip, if that's okay, of what that environment was, and working towards a research which didn't have a performed result. And it's just been edited into some footage by Mira Zhutchkova, the actress who you will see performing. I'll just find that for you now. Is that coming up on the screen?
Yeah, it's good.
The nurse motioned through the curtain that the orange could be eaten once it had been lying near him. You couldn't even touch it. Let alone. Go on. Eat. When I came back, there was an orange on the table. A really big one, pink rather than orange. He smiled when he came to me. The nurse motioned through the curtain that the orange couldn't be eaten once it had been lying near him. Go on, eat it, he said. I took the orange. And just then, he closed his eyes and dozed off. They were always giving him injection to sleep, giving him drugs.
Алла была, Алла была.
And I want to say about this part that it was really interesting and important question of research when we made for Peter foresight during all our rehearsal and conversation and performance of Danya, Mira, Natalka is a light designer, Olesya is a musical composer, to create these four sides to see, but trying to give as much real information live as possible, but never achieve this goal. Like, you always have this feeling that you're already editing some movie lively. Even if you have all the perspective of you, each time you have to decide the frame. And by comparing this for example, frames in a recording of Zoom, we can see that each time it's already decision, it's already reconstruction of information, and it's already, there are so many extra meaning, and we have such an interesting struggle and question about Chernobylska, about USSR as empire with independent Ukraine, but it was in a such like pure emotional feeling how to show it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what was interesting about looking back at that footage, which has just been re-edited by Mira, one of our big themes was disintegration for that period, because we were all, the larger research of Hooligan Art Community since its inception was how to be together as a question practically, and then also what togetherness means in the shadow of the post-Soviet society. A lot of basic questions of trust and of building something together. How does that happen? And so disintegration during in what we were talking about cataclysmic events and the separation of the pandemic. Little did we know. I mean, I remained naive perhaps, but when I look back, I see all the work that we've been making since the beginning with Danya and Luba and all the colleagues has been about war, clearly. And so disintegration as a theme was another way of coming inside like a formal question, but also like what people are experiencing in their lives. Alienation, another huge one. And so looking back on that on that footage now, I see that we're sort of trying to work with failure as a mode as well. And it's amazing to have someone like Luba there stepping in to be able to capture that in this kind of like this film, which has four walls, a kind of theater which is in the surround but without an audience. It's been very extraordinary to collaborate with Luba to continue the visual thinking that we had set out working with, which I just want to bring in Danya here as well, because Danya is someone who's also referring to a huge visual history of art and filmmaking, as well as music and painting and sculpture. And so Hooligan, the first show, coming out of our knowledge of each other for 3 years working, he was able to integrate a mixture of things from reading Andy Warhol's diaries. He played a character, Satan, based on Paradise Lost. He modeled something of Marilyn Monroe. He wore that red dress, which perhaps you saw in the photos. And could draw on Michelangelo for a lot of the sculpture. So to work quite naively in these different in these contexts of these basically kind of what I used to think of as Aleppo style building spaces, like after the end, Beckett space, room to tell stories again. Danya could populate this along with Mira and the other artists, and it's one of the fantastic genius skills that Danya has, and I wanted to see.
I know you and I, Peter, have spoken previously about the way in which you've hoped to physicalize what can't be seen, and I think it's remarkable the way in which that room and that space and that edited footage is just feels very, very present to somebody who wasn't there, and who, you know, who isn't thinking about the space and the cuts and the setup in the way, obviously, that Libya, you were. That there is a sense, there was a sense of being present and being there, even though we are still divided by a screen. But of course, on the 24th of February, everything changed. And as you say, Peter, it's fascinating looking at that footage and looking at those Aleppo-style, Beckett-style buildings, as you say, and now thinking about that in that context. And I wonder, Danylo, maybe one of you would like to explain the origin of Bunker Cabaret, how your new piece came to be. And I know also, obviously, you've been working together quite recently, actually all together in one space. And so to say something about how it began, but also and how adaptable you had to be, and how, you know, how that learning curve of actually working through a screen through the pandemic was potentially quite useful to you, but where the work's going now. So please, you know, whoever'd like to start that one.
Yeah, I just want to say also about radiation finish, just which this piece you saw before in the video, it was very interesting research how we work together, because all team, like actors, Luba and light designer, composer was like in room, and Peter, director, was in camera, and we have like 5 laptops we put on the stage around, and it was big screen, and he can saw like everything from 5-6 camera and 2 Luba cameras, and it was very strange communication how we worked in this pandemic time, very weird and something crazy also, but somehow we found way to work and to create just so small piece, but from this 2 or 3 weeks in this place born a lot of material, and we just later became a performance in Kyiv, yeah, but also like just 2 months, like December 2021 we make production in Kyiv, and then war happened, and yeah, of course I just didn't thought to make art first months, but then we got this we have money from British Council and we should make something, and but idea about Bunker Cabaret, I want to say that it was first of all me and Sam, actor who was in Kyiv. We just thought we're sitting in the shelter. It was actually not so dangerous. We just all times said that we was in the shelter, but of course it was sirens every day, but we just work in this safe space. We found this good space, and with the main question was what we want to say to European audience with our show, and it's somehow from this question we started to create material and connect with all team who was in this moment in May 2022 in Hala, and somehow just we started to make scenes, and then of course we created scenes which then guys put in the show in Hala in which happened in Germany about Bizhenka, yeah.
We have a little clip, I don't know if we have time to show it as well, of what we did in Hala with the female artists who were able to leave Ukraine while the men worked simultaneously with this distance from the bunker. We could show a piece of it.
Yeah, shall we?
I know you've seen it, Charlotte. It's just...
No, let's show it. It'd be great. Definitely.
I think Acacia has it on Vimeo there. Perhaps it's possible to share it. So yes, 25th of May, it was a work of 3-4 weeks residency. And yeah, we just see a little piece of it.
Theaterarbeit der Mahogany Opera und des Dnipro Center of Contemporary Culture.
Увага! Увага! Хулігани! Хулігани! Увага! Увага! Хулігани! Увага! Увага! Хулігани!
Нас немає ні човна, ні корабля. Гнеться до злинуть наче вороженьки. Можем за нашу свободу.
Thanks so much for sharing that again here. And one of the things I just really want to emphasise for people who maybe don't know that work at all is the community element of it, and the way in which you brought the local community in Halle together, particularly Ukrainians and Germans living there locally. And I know that this project has a bit of an afterlife. in terms of the community choir and the resonances that piece of theatre set up. So before we finally get to Bunker Cabaret, which I feel we ought to very, very soon, it would be wonderful to hear an update perhaps on that project from now.
Yeah, so we worked with a British composer, vocal leader called Jessica Marion Davies, who helped us do Hooligan with a lot. So all the hooligans in the original show sang in balaclavas. They didn't fight, they sang. So we were going to do that at Dnipro at the DCCC this year. We should have been there, and that was what the British Council funding was for. So we did Hooligan, but without the hooligan and without the men to talk about the masculinity. Instead, we had all women and mainly female choir of displaced people from Ukraine and local Germans who were interested. And they, after that, they got together and were organizing a singing group as well themselves. And we'll all be coming to our performance of Bunker Cabaret, which is on the 17th, 18th, 19th of November in Berlin. So we're going to have a reunion with all of those wonderful people. And that what you saw, the singing, the work of the community involved was like a very intensive 3-day workshop to integrate the research we'd done in a residency of 2 weeks, also communicating with Danya and Sam all that time, who were making their own musical interludes, which we put into TV screens. And now, thank God, we could explode the TV screens. Danya and Sam are with us in the show, with Mira, who was about to make her speech, where she asks, "Are you a refugee?" to a mirror that she pulls out of the water. So Bunker Cabaret, yes, I can pull up some slides for you if you like.
That would be brilliant, yeah. And then one of you, I don't mind who answers this question, but it'd be lovely to hear a little bit about what it was like to come back together as a group and to work in person in residency that you had to put this work together for Somerset House and its international tour that's now ongoing.
I can answer. It was quite hard because we came, for example, I came from Ukraine directly to a beautiful place in Old Bra, in Pierce Art Center, and it was of course lovely to be there on the sea, but in the same moment, like weird, like started to make again culture and art, because in Ukraine we just make this project Bunker Cabaret, and then like I was like volunteer and help with food to like find money for people who cannot survive in Ukraine on the occupation territory. And it was quite hard, but somehow we found a way again to work together, to find dialogue between us and started to work on show. And we have 1 month before premiere, and then we also experienced crazy thing happening in UK as a queen death and funeral, and we changed date of our show, and it was also curious research for us, I think, for the group experience what's happened in UK. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were in Suffolk in August, so just through all that period, and I can only imagine what, as you say, the extraordinary contrast was landing in somewhere so quiet and green and peaceful. I mean, I know Danylo from other interviews you've done and other work you've done, how important art has been to you and the role of an artist's identity has been to you, particularly in this last 8 months, and the importance of art in order to share experience and communicate. And I would love you to say a little bit more about that, perhaps.
Yeah, I would like to say, yeah, it's because Peter, he again invited Peter, because before we worked with Peter and we tried to push our company, make new project, but now I was busy and old job, organization job, Peter put on his shoulder, and he said, okay, we should make this. And somehow, yeah, it was hard decision to just decide to make art again, because, but somehow when I decided this, and it was like healing from war from, but it's like somehow it's helped to survive, and I think, yes, of course, not everybody should be on the war and warrior. Yeah, somebody should make culture, and somehow day by day I try to accept this thing. But it's still hard for me, for a man, because I also have big challenge. I try to join military support in Ukraine, and but I try to accept this challenge because like life put me on the way of art, and yeah, and we keep going with our show in tour, and yeah, it's really helpful to. I also feel help in our mission to speak about all through art. I think it's also important. If shortly something like this, and also yeah, it's a great possibility to build this net for us, for Ukrainian artists. We like really now build strong, powerful net with people around UK and Europe, and then we can help another artist from Ukraine to go visit these places also.
Yeah.
I think it's also our mission somehow.
Yeah.
I want just to add the fact that it was clear, important, and for us as women artists from Ukraine, the first part that happened during the Bizhenka and then continued to Bunker Cabaret. Also in the beginning, like because we left a bit earlier, we have clear question why we have to make an art, and the only question to respond on totalitarianism that can have a different faces of totalitarianism. It's about individualism and in a clear true process that you have, as that you can connect with other people just to bring back the reason why you have to live, like what your love, what is the reason to continue doing something, because in any case war will end, soon or later it will end, but you have to continue build your life and culture, and it's so important not only just to show like formal parts, but really to bring these materials to then build reasons, and as much people will be touch this idea and really awake that they have something that they love, and this is possible to bring through art. This is a reason to make and to share this experience, because while facing the war, you come into Wonderland, like in Alice. You come into Wonderland and you need something that is a real object that you can understand and follow. You have some kind of light and lighthouse, and it can be really art, but it have to be really true art. Like it have to be really something that's important for you. And I think during this time together, we really, each of us was able to question important question: what is the response to totalitarianism, and how, for me personally, the main important question was how can we shoot with the lens of the lower, like how it can happen, and how can we see during this time.
Yes, how to shoot with the lens of a lover was Luba's question. So we work with questions quite often, like 10 questions from everybody is like the basis for all the work. Everything is devised, everything is co-authored. And we were in Britten Piers in the Benjamin Britten Hall with a piano, wondering what the hell we could do. And we just started singing our questions back to each other and turned into one of the first group written songs from Bunker Cabaret, in which, music, poetry, sketches all feature side by side, but with something missing. And what's missing, I hope, is like the normal glue that holds together a theatre show. I kept telling the artists, please don't sell anything. And the way we can get away with not selling anything is by making the show somehow as porous with life as possible. So Somerset House, and you saw the pictures, okay, when I just presented them there.
Yeah.
Somerset House presents the perfect kind of, again, what to do in the UK when we don't have those falling down factory spaces, how to begin again. Somerset House, the old Lancaster rooms. We played in an old, in a boarded up chapel, which we could fit 45 people in down in Redruth in Cornwall. we will now play in an old dining room, which was the residence of Franz or Friedrich Luft, the German theatre critic. So we want to find a way that in which the theatre, which doesn't seem to support the gaps, is gone. We need the gaps. So the Somerset House, the buses are going by one set of windows, the view to the river through the other, through which the window Danya comes. We don't feel the responsibility that we have to fill in those gaps for an audience. The audience should see that there is this experience of the people in front of you and the life going on outside the windows, because that's what everyone is experiencing. That's the theatrical experience that we would like you to have a taste of. And it's very important that we find the right space. It's becoming more and more important. We tried to play in a theatre in Eastleigh, and we were tempted back to the stage. We opened the curtain, we went onto the stage, rather than just close the curtain, work in the old, it was an old town hall at the point. And if we'd just taken that, we might have managed it. But of course, we were back in the theatre, all these ghosts, all these strange things that the theatre does to you. And something didn't work about the show, because it's not, the audience comes in, finds a chair and sits and waits to be entertained, and we're like, but that's not what we're in it for. I'm sorry, like, it has to be an encounter. There is no point to anything else at the moment. We need to find the place to meet, and you as an audience member have so many things in your head. You have all the movies you've ever watched, you have all the photographs that you take every day, you know your own art history. We can play with you, and you can find, if you want something bigger here, if you need to put this into context and see something epic and mythological, you can find it. But in the meantime, you know, we were going to do it together. We're going to do it with you. We're not going to just give you this stuff. We need to be collaborating with the audiences and with the communities. It should all happen in the same space. We were lucky in Redruth in Cornwall to have an amazing community response. We were put up by people from the community there, a great history of art taking place outdoors in Cornwall, Wild Works, many different companies down there who've done extraordinary work because of the absence of theatres historically. And they took us to their hearts, and they provided us space and shelter and food and parties, and it was amazing. So we want to keep this model going, basically, with Bunker Cabaret. We don't want to work in the normal frame of a theatre company trying to struggle in this hideous moment for the arts in the UK. We would love to lean into the community and lean into the power of connection and encounter. And that's what we're basically pitching now. We're putting out an ask to producers, creative producers, venues, communities, to bring Bunker Cabaret, to bring Hooligan Art Community for something like 2 weeks, to put us up in accommodation with whoever in the community wants to have us and host us, and find a space that's not a theatre, but has windows, is a room, is a place where we meet on the same level, and help us to do the show and help us get there, help us to eat. We'll try to raise donations. It's important to say that the work, we've had some British Council funding in the past, which we've always put, by the way, into research. It's always gone directly into the research. The shows we make for nothing. We always use the money when we've got it to get together, because that's what has been missing in the Ukrainian context for years. That independent artists, of which there are hundreds of brilliant independent, like the best artists that I've met in Europe have been Ukrainian artists the last 10 years. And there's not the funding, the state funding towards the independent art scene. There's not the opportunities for such brilliant individuals as the ones we have here with us, but all our friends from the community, to spend time in research, in making, and being paid for it. So whenever we got funding, that's what we would put the money to. And now we're touring the show, we have no foundation support. We have nothing. We just have a crowdfunding campaign we did to launch. And then at each show, we ask for some donations, and that helps us travel to the next place. So sometimes it's very hard to talk about this, because it's like, the reality right now is Danya needs a laptop. We're trying to do all this work, right, across the board, which you can see from what we've presented we've worked on since December. Radiation was the show in December, which we workshopped before. So within the space of a year. And we have just us. So the artists are administrating. Danya, as an artist, is co-producing. He's now with me in Berlin, and we don't even have, we have no base. The base was registered in Kyiv. The bank account was there. we've got nothing set up, and we don't even have the basic equipment for Danya to be sending emails. I mean, this is the reality, and it's very hard to talk about the reality to people because everyone assumes that,
Of course.
that you're working on such an important topic that of course there's money for it. It hasn't arrived. It's not arrived.
And particularly when you're working, so spontaneously between different buildings, you are so peripatetic, always on the move, always reacting and responding to the next offer that appears and materializes. And, I know that the work is evolving in Berlin, and it's so exciting to see what you're going to be doing in that very iconic space. And I know that we've been talking about maybe doing a film screening or something with the Courtauld in February. So if not in February itself, we'll see. I mean, it is still very much up for debate, but we hope that we'll be able to do a follow-up in and around the 24th of February. Here, so that we can keep some continuity going at the very least.
That would be great. And this peripatetic nature that you mentioned, like this hasn't just happened now because of the war. This was our research for over the years, being on the move, responding to space. It means that we have this as practice. We know how to do this, and it's something that we would love to work with more and more people on, because we're faced with so many restrictions working within institutions, or ideas about how you make theatre, how you make funding. And what I hope is that we can impart some of like our methodology as well to the friends and colleagues that we collaborate with now that we're working more in the UK and Europe.
Absolutely. I know that we've got participants who are wonderfully responding in the chat. Please do feel free to use the chat. People who are here to ask questions. We've got only a few minutes left really to wind up. It's the time has flown, and so I wonder if we should have some final thoughts, perhaps about where you see Bunker Cabaret in after Berlin, or at the end of Berlin.
Yeah, so we're putting together a tour now with the help of the amazing Mahogany Opera, who've been supporting us for a number of years with whatever they have. They've been able to share it with us through administration. And so that's Freddie Waite-Walker and Bridget Rennie. And they're helping us to put this ask out, basically. And of course, we want to come to the UK, and we're hoping that the Ukrainian Institute will support a tour. And we're also looking to tour Europe. So we're looking for, as you can see from the Somerset House space, we would love to work with a place that has something old, something porous, something which we can work in relation to, not this nothingness of the theatre. So if anyone has ideas of gallery spaces that could support something like this in the UK or internationally, or rooms, reception rooms, the more absurd the better. We can work with any of those conditions, and with pleasure would be able to come with the right support. If people could jump on the take the energy from this and get in touch with us. I'll just put up the slide here. Just before we move on to any questions, so you can get the details down so it's not rushed. Here we go. So, no, wrong one. Can you see this?
Yes.
Put it on the screen.
Perfect.
So our Instagram is hooligan_art_community. You can email me directly at pcant@hotmail.com for any support, links to foundations or offers to bring us to your town. And then we have a little Danylo Shramenko laptop fund here. This is also, it's not just Danylo's laptop we're raising money for, but, step by step, we're just trying to get onto the next place. We need flights to get everyone back to the UK after the Berlin shows. So if anyone's feeling willing to donate for a laptop, please use the PayPal, which is danyloshremenkod@gmail.com, and put laptop in the line, and Daniel will definitely put it to the laptop fund, and we'll try and get him something in Berlin and start booking up all the other places that we want to go to.
Yeah. And it's just so exciting seeing where your work is developing and going, and I hope, you know, and to hear the way that the communities have responded, and particularly for me, you know, I keep coming back to that show in Halle where you were really able to integrate into the community. It's just an extraordinary thing to do so quickly, and I think so important to do, particularly at this time, to really understand that this is a real life situation, not something that is mediated through a screen or through our news channels, but actually is your reality, and any way in which we're able to support or to work with you is something that I feel we really ought to be sharing. So I think, unless we've got any final thoughts and questions, I think perhaps it's time for me to thank you three so much for sharing your time this evening, and what's a very hectic schedule when you're opening in Berlin next week in this entirely new place. I know you've got practical problems with ticketing and things in a private venue, so I wish you lots and lots of luck with all of that next week, and I really look forward to seeing where this conversation and theatre experiment and collaboration can go in the next few months. Thank you all so much, and thank you to everybody this evening who has been listening in to our conversation. Do please feel free to contact any one of us and the various means that you have.
And perhaps we could just share, by means of an outro, the slideshow that Liubov has prepared of her perspective through the process of making Bunker Cabaret. It's just a few slides which could play us out, maybe.
Absolutely, yes, let's do that. Acacia, would you like to? Yeah.
And just to say, yeah, thank you very much to you, Charlotte, and Acacia, for hosting us. And yes, it's a pity not to be able to have some questions.
Next time. I think you have shown such an extraordinarily rich amount of work. There's a lot for people to digest all in one go.
It's a lot, and we've put the link there in the messages to everyone. There's the voicesofukraine.net project, which has been instigated by Andrea Ferran, who helped us co-produce Luba's short film during the May residency. So while also rehearsing, we also made a film, Liubov.
Of course you did.
And that's an extraordinary thing to go and look at. It's a short film. It's a wonderful work by Luba. You can see the quality of her work here, of the slides she produced for the show, which are featured in the show. And then there's our archive, vimeo.com/Hooligan Art Community. And that just shows you, a taste of the work and what we've been working on. And I'm just going to put my email in the chat one more time here. And anyone who feels like that they'd like to get in touch, please don't hesitate. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here in this Zoom world.